All right, guys. I'm going to have to be real disciplined on this one because I'm all kinds of excited. Uh, the Federal Reserve, and not just the U.S. Federal Reserve, but all the main Federal Reserves in the world got together this weekend at Jackson Hole, Wyoming. They always tend to meet in these high-end resorts. Not always tend to. They always meet in the high-end resorts. They never meet in Tupelo, Mississippi. They're always in Davos or like I said, Jackson Hole or Aspen or any of those crazy places, Monte Carlo. But they did something pretty exciting from the standpoint of us tinfoil hat people. They kind of got together and really signaled for the first time, maybe not the first time. I mean, they very kind of blatantly, clearly signaled how much in cahoots they are, the collusion that's going on for this globalism, this global policy elites, and they kind of released these statements that said that the central banks have to be more involved in governing. What they said was the governments have to be more involved in the central banks, but what they meant was that the governments have to implement the central bank's policies, like immigration policy. I mean, they came straight out and said that if Japan's going to come out of its malaise, which, by the way, Japan is not going to come out of its malaise, that the government has to implement the immigration reforms that the central bank wants. So they basically just kind of came out and declared this giant power grab. That like I said, it's not surprising to anyone who probably watches these kind of YouTube channels and whatnot, but the blatant way they came out and did it, that basically they just admitted that none of their policies are working, that the world has fundamentally changed. This isn't even me reading into their statement. This is pretty much their statement, that the world has fundamentally changed, and while they think that their traditional policy options for dealing with economic hard times will continue to work in the future, there's a significant chance that it won't, and then they will need to work very closely with governments to implement brand new policies. This is a huge seismic shift. The central banks, at least now there are central banks around the world that are official government entities, but most of the major ones aren't, and ours is not. They always act like they're non-governmental and that they're above politics, and there should be as little cross-pollination as possible between the politicians and the central bankers. And they'll still say now that there shouldn't be any congressional oversight. The Federal Reserve will fight tooth and nail to never be audited. They never have to expose their books or their practices or anything like that. But they came out this weekend and said essentially that we have to turn over much more giant swaths of our economy to the central banks than they already control, and they already control huge amounts of it. The U.S. Federal Reserve is talking about buying corporate debt, which is a big deal. Up to now, it's only bought supposedly government-backed entities, government-backed assets. This all gets real complicated. If I'm not really smart enough to be talking about it, but now they're talking about buying up private sector debt. They're talking about running. They talked about very large or statistic. They're talking about massive deficit spending. Because they got to get inflation up, and they're talking about all their voodoo again with inflation, where they can buy things and borrow money and never have to pay it back because they can inflate it away, and they're not being able to hit their inflation targets right now, and it's scaring the crap out of them because this is fundamental to their entire philosophy of life, that there's free things laying around, that they're smart enough. This is socialism. Okay, I hate to be this guy. This is why I knew I should have maybe tackled this one. It wasn't going to be a short. But all these institutions have been so infiltrated and inundated and completely just absorbed everything about socialism that they're convinced that there's a way out there that they can do all this stuff for free. They don't need capitalism. One of the things they talked about was doing away with cash, so that they could charge negative interest rates. And what they mean by negative interest rates and not having cash, that means everyone's got to have their money in a bank, and then they can just, with the push of a button, take it. You know, that negative interest rates means they're charging you money for holding your money. They're charging you fees for holding your money. In a cash-based society, they can't do that because people just stop putting their money in the bank and they hide it in their mattress, and so they can't charge those fees. If they do away with cash and you've got to use debit cards and electronic money, then whoever controls the computer servers, the government, can take the money as they will and just charge a fee, charge a tax, call it a one-time. They did this in Cyprus, by the way. This is nothing new, and this isn't conspiracy theory. This isn't me with my tinfoil hat on. They said it. They talked about doing away with. Now they said, "Oh, this is a bizarre." I think they called it an ivory tower idea, but they're talking about it. The central bankers are talking about it at their official meetings, and they're admitting that they're talking about it. So it's not that bizarre. It's something they're willing to do. Of course, for those of us religious people, a cashless society is very, very scary. But anyway. So significant things happened this weekend on the economic front, on the globalization front, and they also signaled that they're not. I mean, it depends on how deep you want to go with the conspiracy theory. To me, I think they signaled that they're not sure that they can handle whatever's coming next. They can't stop it and control it because they want to. I think they want to. I think they recognize that people worldwide have been pushed too far, and that they're risking their agenda by risking some backlash. So I don't think they want a crash right now, but I think they're sort of indicating that they're not sure they can stop it if it comes. The more cynical among us might say that they signaled that they're going to start a crash so that they can try to implement these greater controls. The older I get, the harder it gets to argue against that. Some of my optimism and naivety has drained out of me at that age. But at the same time, they look vulnerable right now, and I don't think that they're going to try to do anything drastic. Anything more drastic than normal. I mean, talking about a cashless society so they can take money at will to try to force you to spend it on the things they think you should buy. So that anyway, it gets too convoluted. It's like a bowl of spaghetti and an onion. It's like a bowl of spaghetti onions or onion spaghetti. When you stuff, it just gets ridiculous. But look into it. Jackson Hole, Wyoming. Do your own reading. It was on the Drudge Report. I'm sure it'll be on Zero Hedge. You probably won't see it on anything more mainstream than that. But significant things are afoot in the economic world and on the globalization front. Thanks, guys.